we will listen now to Laura. And so thank you again. It was really great. And so we will listen to Laura, who is the last speaker of this panel. And Laura is an art historian. She's a curator and research fellow and co-investigator on the Arts and Humanities Research Council funded project, Richard Di Marco, the Italian Connection, 2018-2020, at Duncan of Jordanstone College of Art and Design at the University of Dundee. She was a postdoctoral researcher on European women's video art in the 70s and 80s, between 2015 and 2018, and Rewind Italia artist video in Italy in 70s and 80s, between 2011 and 2014, and both at the University of Dundee. And she co-edited Rewind Italia, early video art in Italy, at supposedly published at John Libey in 2015, and European women's video art in the 70s and 80s, also at John Libey. So thank you so much. It's you.
And I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for putting this beautiful symposium together. In the 70s, when the portable video recorder was relatively new, several women artists experimented with a medium that at the time was considered easier to operate than film and free from the heavy male-dominated imprint of traditional artist practices. For its intrinsic specificities, video allowed immediacy and intimacy and was cheaper, relatively speaking. For many of these reasons, it was soon adopted by many women artists, some of whom were involved in feminist movements or were exploring independently themes and issues that had arisen in second wave feminism. Now, in this paper, I will examine briefly the contemporary situation of art school departments, and then I will focus on some case studies that are particularly significant in showing how women started teaching video and media in the 70s and 80s. This is an initial investigation. I undertook some of it during EVA, but it was very initial. And I wish to develop this in the next following months. Due to the COVID-19 restrictions and limitation, part of this research took really an unorthodox route, you might say. The usual interviews conducted online were accompanied by networking on social media and mailing lists. This bottom-up research helped me not only to gather further knowledge on the topic, but also gain a sense of the relevance and legacy of women artist teachers in video and media. In the 70s, in several countries, the UK among them, many women video pioneers were students in fine art and sculpture departments. These departments were marked by a strong male culture, and most of teachers and students were still men. At the time, many art schools would offer opportunities to access video as an apparatus, but offered no training. Most artists taught themselves how to use video and considered peer-to-peer feedback and knowledge sharing as essential. One of the few opportunities to be taught and received feedback by women artists working with video was when someone was invited as guest lecturers on speakers' programs. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this. Renowned feminist British video artist and author Catherine Elwes reports such a situation at Farnham and later at the Slade School of Art, where she said all the studios were run by men. Yes, there were some few part-time women tutors among the tutors at Slade, but none of them were specialized in video or performance. Two art forms towards which Elwes was moving. In particular, Elwes remarked upon the importance of being able to show personal materials to those tutors and share her personal life. At the time, her personal life was having a major impact on her feminist practice, where the personal is political. Although limited, the support and mentorship of those women tutors at Slade appear to have offered significant guidance and reinforcement at the time for the young Elwes and her female colleagues alike. Elwes complained about the heavy male-dominated culture and the lack of women tutors at Slade School of Art. In response, and in an altogether unprecedented way, British artist Stuart Brisley gave Elwes, who at the time was still a student, the entire budget for the visiting lecture program for the year. This allowed Elwes to invite as guest lecturer feminist artists such as Rose Garrard, Tina Keane, who at the time were working both with video, and Rose Finn-Kelsey, who was more generally using moving image in her practice. In an article entitled "The Feminist in Art School, A Recent View," which appeared in the first issue of Feminist Art News, Elwes reports that unfortunately the program did not radically alter the balance of power in the school. Her words. Elaine Shamilt, today an internationally renowned artist, in 1974 was a student in the sculpture department at the Winchester School of Art. At the time, she started incorporated video in her installation and performances, and in 1975, she was selected to present at the famous video show at the Serpentine Gallery in London. At the time, she considered video to be an ephemeral part of a more complex process, so that the artwork resulting from it would be her prints. She remembers that at Winchester at the time, there were no female instructors and just 3 fellow women students. Like many of her generation, she remembers that the department provided no training in video, but allowed students to use the Sony Rover Portapack. Later on, when she became a student at the Royal College of Art, she remembers Susan Hiller coming as an invited lecturer. Hiller made a profound impression on the students, and Shamilt remembers receiving some encouraging positive feedback from her. When Shamilt was at the Royal College of Art, she started teaching printmaking herself. The nature of her practice, which consisted in incorporating different media, such as video and film, in my view, influenced her approach to teaching. Shamilt comments, "My approach was for students to abandon the idea that there were sculptors or painters or video artists, whatever. The important issue was to think of themselves as artists first and foremost. Technique is just a technique at the end of the day." In the early 70s, though, something changed. Courses and programs incorporating video art were gradually developed in Europe, and on few occasions, women artists took the lead in such programs, and some were invited to teach. In 1980, the Scottish video pioneer Elsa Stansfield was invited to create the audio-video department for time-based media at the Jan van Eyck Academy in Maastricht, soon after renamed Time-Based Art Studio. The academy was structured as an open workshop for artists who had already received professional training and were able to use the workshop at the academy to develop their project for a year that could be extended to a second year. The academy relied heavily on Stansfield's international reputation and authority in the field of video and media as head of department. Elsa was a video artist who had pioneered video in the 70s as part of the duo Oikos-Stansfield and had exhibited internationally. In 1978, she was awarded the first video bursary of the Art Council of Britain at the Maidstone College of Art in Kent, established by video pioneer David Hall. Stansfield structured the audio-video department with a postgraduate program that functioned a bit as a platform, promoting independent research in which students worked and made art independently. The students were called the participants. The department adopted a very expanded notion of time-based media, which included film, performances, videotapes and installation, audio works, and I quote, installation using any of these media individually or combined with any other media, pursuing their integration with fine arts. The audio-video department was intended to welcome artists who want, I quote, work with these media equally in the areas of research and production. In Stansfield's view, it would open a lot of opportunities to students in not exclusively in art-oriented audiences. The department encouraged distribution, and a videotheque was established that collected all the works that were made at the academy by the students. At the video sound department, screening and seminars were organized where contemporary video artworks were analyzed and discussed. The selection of the work presented a very good gender balance. Also, trips were organized to relevant exhibitions and museums in Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium. At the Jan van Eyck Academy, we can see that a key improvement compared to the past was the availability of technical knowledge and skills that were taught and available to the participants. Technicians, likewise, offered high level of assistance, enabling students to develop their original solution in studios that could be booked. So an important feature of the program developed by Stansfield was also the recurring presence of guest lecturers, a key element, really. Thanks to her international reputation and network, Stansfield was able to invite some of the most prominent video and media artists of the time from Europe and America. Renowned names include Julius, Madeleine Oikas, Ulrike Rosenbach, John Jonas, John Latham, Marina Abramovic, Nan Oevers, just to name a few. Stansfield also organized international events at the department, which became occasions to invite la crème de la crème of the European and American video community. In 1981, for example, she organized March 1981, an event that spanned from installation, single video channel videos, performances, discussions, and lectures for the participants. In a brief introduction to the event, Stansfield underlined how it was very difficult at the time to view video art in the Netherlands. There was not much chance in particular to access to installations. And in a sense, video had not yet had the chance to develop fully as in other countries, like I'm sure she's referring to the UK, her native country, but also with no doubt to Germany, where several artists had started experimenting video. Stansfield explains that the situation was partially due to the complete lack of specialized departments and programs within the country, but also to the scarcity of equipment that was usually seen, I quote, as an extension of some department and rarely as a fine art option. She praised the foresight of the Jan van Eyck Academy, which had invited her to establish a video department in 1980, and the studio opened officially in September of that year. After only 6 months, Video Mart was partially organized by the participants who had the chance to show their work, the fruit of those early months at the Academy, alongside some of the most pioneering practitioners from the UK, Belgium, Germany, and of course, the Netherlands. Artists invited included Dutch video artist Lydia Schouten, Belgian video artist Lily Dujury, British video artists Mick Artney and David Hall, and German artist Ursula Wevers. The invited specialists also gave lectures and led discussion with the aim of sharing their approaches and view on video art for the benefit of the participants. In the above mentioned context of the Netherlands, where it was rare to have the chance to view much video art, and in particular video installations, as Elsa was pointing out, VideoMart acted as a catalyst for the contemporary debate on video art, as well as key support for the students' practice. In 1984, Stansfield also organized a symposium at the Jan van Eyck to accompany the seminal exhibition, The Luminous Image, at the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam. For Elsa, her role at the Jan van Eyck was very important. Instead of regarding it as marginal, she considered it to be complementary to her own practice. In 1988, in her text for the exhibition, Magnetische Welt, she wrote, "Over the past 7 years, beside the production and presentation of my own art, which I've done in collaboration with Madeleine Oikes, I have tried to give navigational directions to those artists at the Jan van Eyck who have undertaken an uncharted journey across the magnetic field of the time-based media." This quote by Stansfield utilizes two powerful metaphors: the navigational directions for her teaching style and the journey in uncharted territories for the career embarked upon by her students. In my view, these metaphors represent very well Stansfield's approach to teaching, a way of cultivating students' independence, very much in the spirit of the Jan van Eyck Academy. On this matter, I interviewed Oikes, who commented as follows: "Elsa Stansfield had an unusual way of tutoring the participants. She let them feel equal and often didn't comment on the work, but asked the question. In a way, Oikes' works echo Stansfield's. Her method was to guide the students by getting them to get solutions on their own through a sort of Socratic process." The Swedish video artist Antoni Frank Gramsdotter was a student at the Academy back then and recalled its favorable gender balance and the attention paid to the women artists in video at the time. She particularly commented, "Elsa Stansfield was aware in a way I had not encountered before of lifting and supporting female students." Antoni remember how she was of inspiration, and it was important to have an identification with a female student, and also the rich program of guest lecturers, of which she remembers particularly Marina Abramovic and Stansfield Oikes themselves. Antoni herself became a teacher at the University of Arts and Crafts Design in Stockholm, where she organized the first international screening of video art. As part of her teaching approach, she found important to introduce her students to video artworks by women pioneers. And some years later, she organized a trip to the Jan van Eyck, where she reconnected with her teacher, Elsa. In the 90s, Elsa left the Academy, and in 92 was reorganized in different departments. Lydia Schouten, that had participated to March 1981, started to teach at the Artex University of Arts in Arnhem in 1988. And she actually commented that her approach to to teaching was characterized by showing to the students different ways of working with video. So again, this element of working with installation, performance, and incorporating video in different ways. It is impossible in such a brief presentation to name all the women artists who were teaching video in the 70s and especially in the 80s, but I would like to mention two in particular. Tamara Krikorian, who taught at Maidstone College and Newcastle in the 70s, and Maria Vedder, who taught electronic media at the University of Cologne from 1979 to 1989. Also, Federica Marangoni, who was key to put Angela Churchill from NYU in contact with the Centro Video Arte in Ferrara for the inception of video studios for NYU students in Italy. From this brief analysis of selected case studies, some key common elements emerge. The relevance of having empowering role models and mentors for women students, the importance of being encouraged by women teachers to explore the new medium from and with a feminist perspective and approach, an expanded approach to video art as an art form that included single channel video, performance and installation, the ease with which women students could share with women teachers their personal life in line with the motto, the personal is political, which was at the center of their practice in many occasions, and a feminist approach on non-hierarchical teaching to treat students as equals and peers. My research has revealed that not much is available currently on the topic, and that the role and contribution of women video pioneers in teaching is still wholly neglected, as is their legacy. As I mentioned at the beginning of this paper, I posted my abstract in various Facebook pages and communities, and I received more than 100 comments. This has revealed how much this interest is out there and how much is still to do. In 2017, artist and researcher Haagen Ferliger developed a collaborative art and research project with the aim to problematize issues of gender representation and balance in institutions. With a feminist intervention, he developed a program across the academy, the Jan van Eyck Academy, and renamed the academy into the Margaret van Eyck, and the studios that were all dedicated to the men at the time into Anne, Elsa, Lucia, Therese, and Wilhelmina. These names were kept until April 2020. Haagen created, though for the length of his project, a parallel world where women were at the center. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. It was really, really rich presentation for your rich presentation. I didn't know like most of the artists you mentioned, so it was really interesting to learn about all this work and all these processes. And it was perfect timing as well, so thank you. There is already one question from Claire, who asked, could you please elaborate about the link between immediacy and intimacy in video art when used by women artists?
Well, when I researched EVA, European Women's Video Art, many practitioners, many artists pointed out that video didn't require a large crew. So you could have a very intimate set where if you were experimenting with your body, it would create the perfect environment to perform. For the immediacy, you had a feedback, a small monitor to view what you were at the time shooting. So differently from film, where you could have access that material only after it was developed, you could immediately see yourself on the screen and kind of get a sense of how the performance was playing. In this capacity, video could be replayed few hours after it was actually made, and allowed, of course, new ways of sharing and new ways of kind of showing the work. I hope I have replied to your question. Thank you very much for it.
There is another one from Mariana. Thank you for your presentation. I noticed that the term technical got called a lot. I cannot avoid to make a connection with the first presentation and ask if do you think there's an implication on the notion of instruction or absence of it that paves the way to deconstruct transmission hierarchic structure?
Well, thank you for your question. I think that actually, you know, the technical element at the time was very much sometimes, in what I gathered in my interviews, really shared in communities, peer-to-peer. So in a way, avoiding that hierarchical teaching that art colleges and university were providing. In a sense, it was basically sort of shared knowledge that was passed in from artist to artist. Jan van Eyck, in this sense, made a turn, made the difference, because there the technical knowledge was with the technician and was actually taught to the students by the technicians in a more probably formal way than before. So I think that actually there is a switch there. Although, of course, the peer-to-peer and non-hierarchical model at the Jan van Eyck was very much present for the structure of the academy itself.
Thank you, Laura. So there is a question from Katie Deepwell. She says hi, and I say hi to Katie also. And the question is, do you think that there is an episodic and short-term quality to women's work in art schools in temporary employment?
Yes, I think that when Kate Elwes underlined in her interview that all the female tutors were part-time, it was not by coincidence. She was pointing out that many of these women were employed on a fractional contract, and actually they were casual workers in a sense, visiting lecturers as well. So her example points out this issue very well. And I also think that the remark that ultimately Kate made in her article for the Feminist Review points towards the same problem, because when she says that that program didn't make any substantial difference, it was partially due to the fact that it was just a speaker's program. It was just something that was, in a sense, ephemeral, that was, in a sense, casual on the more formal program at Slate.
Thank you, Laura. There's also a question from Isadora. Thank you for your presentation, Laura. Based on your research, it's incredible to think the amount of women artists working with video, and mostly with Portapac medium, around the world in the 70s and 80s. In Brazil, there was only 2 Portapac equipments shared by the artists, and there is a huge scene of women video artists here. In your research, do you have a hypothesis for the use of this specific media by women artists?
Yes, the inception of video was different from country to country. This is I learned on EVA. So it is not unlikely to find out that in some countries, the availability of the Sony Portapac was very restricted, and later of the U-matic and all other formats that came after. The point is that I think that tracing how those apparatuses became available is key to understand how video communities developed. And one of my next steps is investigating how feminist collectives or feminist organizations actually facilitated this availability of the Portapac, because of course it was possible to get it from a college, but if you were not a student, or you were after your education, what would happen? And I also would like to investigate the non-hierarchical education that women were receiving in collectives and feminist groups in general. To be honest, I don't know much about Brazil, but in these past few weeks, I've been contacted by dozens of people kind of with messages on what was happening in their countries, in the US in particular, and in Eastern Europe. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Laura. We have 1 minute left, and I have a question, and it will be the last one. And then I just wanted also to say that we will have like a break. Unfortunately, not a coffee break, or at least not a coffee break altogether, but a break. But before that, I was really struck. I loved this piece called Smile, this performance Smile, the one you presented from Lydia Schouten. And I really found it really interesting. And this with this image of this woman doing, you know, it's really poetic and it's really strong. And I was wondering if this kind of performances, they were presented or they were performed just once, or was it part of a series, or was it possible? Was it possible to recreate this installation in different contexts, or was it also present in exhibitions or something? Because it is from '79, and you wrote in that it's like 30 minutes. So I wanted to know like what was this piece about?
There is an issue with installations that have a performative aspect, a video aspect, and you know that in a sense how they can be recreated. I've worked a lot on the issue of reenactment and reenactment with the artists, and you know in general with other performers. This is an issue opened, and I think that actually is up to each artist find, you know, research their way and to express how they want these works to be preserved, to be re-exhibited, and to be archived. Regarding specifically Smile, I don't know how many times it was performed. I think just the one, but I will be happy to check with Lydia. And actually, I myself have worked a lot on this issue because also the body changes with the performer. And so the overall performance might change with time, I think.
Thank you. And I just see that there's a comment from Sunny Buke, and she who says, I was able to make some video work in the 90s because my school had a camera available. Today is it's great that editing is so much easier for the artist. So thank you so much for the 4 speakers. It was an incredible panel, and I was very happy to chair it. And so see to everyone. So we start again at 4 o'clock.